It's not the woman's unwillingness to have the conversation with their partner because they think their partner will say no, because in most cases their partner will say yes, right? It's the woman's belief that she's not valuable or worthy enough to devote that time for herself. So how do we help them? I feel like that's my journey in life right now.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone that doesn't drink alcohol. And I spend every waking moment of my life helping other people do the same, like right now. How you doing, folks? How are you all handling lockdown? It's a bit weird here, to be honest. I'm in Los Angeles, the epicenter of the pandemic in California, which is the epicenter of the world's pandemic. If you think about America, I'm still stuck here, waiting for the government to tell me what they're going to do with my visa extension application, which oddly is going to take up to 6 months, by which time they're either going to say to me, no, sorry, you can't have an extension, get out. Or yeah, you can have an extension, but it's now just expired, get out. And, this whole thing has really got me thinking about freedom and our illusion of how much freedom and control that we have in this world. It's like, I have a split family in America and Los Angeles. And right now I'm really worried that if I go back to the UK and I go on my own, I'm not going to be able to come back to America. And if I take my wife and my daughter with me to the UK, that my wife won't be able to come back to America where her parents are. It's a very, very, very difficult and fraught situation. And, right at the beginning of lockdown, you're talking, 3 months ago now, there was me, there's Liza, there's Zia, and then there's my mother and father-in-law. And out of the five of us, the only one that I really worried about, and I've talked about it in a few podcasts, is my father-in-law. And that's because he's 79. And from the moment that he set foot on these shores as a broken man coming over from Korea, he has worked his arse off. So 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, he works as a tailor, making suits for... he's made suits for Sir Anthony Hopkins. He's made suits for Mr. Miyagi. Do you remember him? And The Rock, Dwayne Johnson in the past. But right now, because of the pandemic, he's like many, many millions of people around the world, his business has fallen apart. And I always worried what would happen to him because outside of work, there's no meaning and purpose there. And there is no connection. Because if you work 12 to 14 hours a week, a day, 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, you disconnect from everybody but your work. And in later life, it's really difficult to get that back again. And once you don't have your work, you can be consumed by loneliness and solitude and isolation. And even at family gatherings, it's like he doesn't exist. We walk in, nobody. It's absurd because in many ways he's the main focal point of every family meeting because he is the father, right? And in Korean culture, that's very important. So nobody eats before he does. Everybody really makes a big deal about saying hi to him. But then after that, he sits down and nobody says anything to him. And he rarely says anything to anybody else. And you could say that it's a language thing, but it's more than that. It's a connection. There's no connection. People find it difficult to connect with him and he finds it difficult to connect with his family. And that is due to this decision at some point in the past linked to his cultural story and identity that he needs to work his socks off. And I just knew that without that work, that his mental health and his physical health would deteriorate quite rapidly because I've seen this happen in the railway when I worked in the railway for 20 years. You wouldn't believe how many funerals that we ended up going to of people who recently had retired. So they spent their whole lives working on the railway, complaining about how much they hated it. And then they left, and then they died not long afterwards because they had nothing to do. And I worry about my dad in that same regard, like, what do you do other than watch telly or go to the pub? What is there to do? What is there that's motivating you? And what is there that is challenging you, and I see that missing. And the thing that's gone on at the moment that has really got me thinking a lot about life, and I mentioned this on the Wednesday online support group meeting at 1000 Days Sober, is right now he's very sick, and my wife is taking up all of her time to take care of him. And it's like this mad rush to help him get better by telling him not to eat this, to eat this, to take these supplements, to stop taking those supplements, to go and do this form of exercise, and don't do this and sit in front of the telly. And it's this mad rush at the age of 79 to do all of these things. I realized in that moment that this is the way that you need to be living your life on a day-to-day basis if you don't want to be or don't want to have a body racked with physical pain and suffering, and a mind that is slowly deteriorating and feels disconnected from the world. If you don't want that to happen, then you need to pull your shit together right now. And there's a parallel with addiction here, and the addictive system that we exist in, which we call life, where everything is geared up towards grabbing the instant gratification. I need to do this right now. So that could be, I need to eat this chocolate cake right now. I need to drink this vodka right now. Or I need to sit on my ass right now and watch Dark season 3 instead of going for a run. Whatever it is, it's instant gratification. But I'm telling you, when you get to 79, 80 years of age, I don't think you're sitting in that chair thinking through your life of all the wonderful memories. Oh, I remember that time when we opened up our suit shop in Hollywood. Oh, I remember that time when we drank 3 bottles of Dom Perignon at the race course. Like, I don't think you're thinking those things. I think what's happening at the tail end of your life when you're racked with pain and suffering is you're thinking, how can I stop feeling in pain and how can I stop suffering? To the point that a lot of people, when they get to that age, they just want to end it. They just want it over because they can't deal with this pain. Right? So it's like, how can I avoid the pain? Well, how you avoid the pain is by not drinking, is by not eating sugar, is by not choosing to be sedentary, is by not choosing not to meditation and be mindfulness, choosing not to sit in front of the TV, choosing to read, choosing to educate yourself, right? And I can hear you loud and clear screaming through the podcast, everything in moderation is okay. Is Lee saying we can't have a life? You need to change your perspective on what you think a life worth living is. There was a time when I used to think eating steak, drinking wine, drinking cider, watching TV, eating chips, all these things were like a really good thing. And that if I didn't have them, I'd be in a lot of misery and I'd be suffering from lack. But after a prolonged period of time of living an existence without these things and seeing in my face, feeling in my mind and feeling in my body how much more stronger, how much more emotionally intelligent I am, how much more intelligent I am, how much braver I am, how much more courageous I am, and how much more confident I am, you realize that this is how I want to feel. This is how I want to be. This is who I want to be. This is how I want to feel. This is how I want to think. That is what I value in life, not the drink, not the chips, not the candy cane. Right? That is not what we want at all. And it's not until you make these massive changes that you realize how much more potential you have. And for you on this podcast right now, make that change, that first change, to stop drinking alcohol. Make that change, because it coming with that change is incredible power. And if you allow myself and the team at 1000 Days Sober to help you harness that power, you will not recognize your life. You will not recognize your body and your mind. You will go sailing. You will build your rocket and you will fly to Mars. You will do that, right? I'm telling you. Anyway, so stop these instant gratification things right now. Ask yourself the question. I posed this to the group on Wednesday. What is it that you're not doing right now that you really should be doing? Okay? You're not immortal. Stop thinking you're immortal. Stop thinking the end will never come. It will come quicker than you think. Email me at thetruthaboutalcohol@gmail.com and let me know what you think about that question. What is it that right now you're putting off that you shouldn't be doing? Maybe you're putting off dealing with this alcohol thing. Get over to www.1000dayssober.com. Sign up for our £40 a month subscription. The value you get for that £40 a month, considering what is £40? What is it, like 3 or 4 bottles of wine? For £40 a month, for 3 or 4 bottles of wine a month, we change your life. We save you money. It is an investment. We not only save you money, we save you years in dead, wasted life. We prolong your life. We improve your mind. Everything that we do for that £40 a month is providing you with, it's an investment. It's not a cost. I'm telling you, if you're not quick, the price is going up. The price is going to go up. It's going to go up a lot because we're providing a lot of value. So get to 1000 Days Sober right now and start paying you 40 quid a month and get grandfathered in. Otherwise, you're going to be paying a hell of a lot more. Okay. The other thing to do when you get to that website, go to the podcast page. I'm going to be speaking to Grace Beason today, and we would have created a superb set of show notes and a workbook that goes a little bit more in depth about the topics that we're going to cover today on Grace Beason's show. And then you can answer those questions and educate yourself. So get over there. You just have to put your email address in and we will send you the show notes and the workbook for Grace Beason's show or any other show that you see on that podcast page. Okay? All right. Without further ado, I'm going to shut the hell up and talk about Grace Beason. Grace ran her own successful wedding and event planning business for 14 years before she listened to her own voice about what she really wanted out of life and went out to find it. She stopped drinking, she started a podcast, and she set out on a surprising journey of self-discovery and personal development. And at the age of 43, she transformed her life and career to become the happiest and most fulfilled version of herself yet. Grace Beason is a professional coach trained in authentic leadership and focuses on relationship and mindset coaching at Grace Beason Coaching. So have a good listen to her. If you want to reach out and get in touch with her or find out how to hire her as a coach, go to www.1000dayssober.com, find her specific podcast page, and you'll find all the links. Okay? Thanks for listening. Grace Beason, how's it going, Grace?
Hey, Lee. I'm doing really well. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no worries. Where are you today in the world?
I am in sunny, lovely Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, and how have you been managing your lockdown experience?
You know, we're really fortunate, I think, in many ways. I know we are, but I've been so grateful for North Carolina, especially during this time, because we have had a gorgeous spring and we've spent so much time outside, which is so good for my soul anyway, but particularly in this time, it's just been so good to go on walks every day. And I have children who are 6 and 8 years old, 2 boys, and we've done a lot of hiking and walking. And so all things considered, we are great. I mean, we are beyond happy that school is over. I can tell you that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
How's it been on the client front? Have you had an upsurge? Have you had people bailing out? And what has been the impact on your clients as a result of what's been going on with COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have been a life coach for less than a year. And after having been a wedding and event planner for over 20 years. So it's been really interesting to see what's happening with clients on all fronts. the wedding and event world is on a complete pause, as I'm sure you know. There are no big gatherings, and there won't be for the foreseeable future. And yet I am still working on 2 huge weddings for 2021. It's sort of like old habits die hard. So which is funny that we're talking about drinking and a lot of old habits. But, I've been a wedding planner for so long that it's still a way that I enjoy connecting with people and serving people and helping them. Anyway, it's funny that the clients with events have sort of crept up where I didn't intend for them to. And the coaching clients, which was on a steady climb, there was sort of a pause with that because everyone, what I really experienced was people moving deeply into fear over finances, over just how to move forward with their lives, how to carve out time for themselves now that they're home and with their children. Because I'm coaching mostly to women and a lot of women with children. And I think everyone's just sort of like, I don't know how to make time for myself. Like I was prioritizing my own mental health and spiritual fitness, and now I don't know how to do that. And so what I'm hoping is that now that we're 3 months in and we're transitioning into summer, that while there is still the challenge of having children at home all the time, for those who do, that now we're all sort of getting a little bit more used to our lives as they are now, and we're more willing generally to prioritize our spiritual fitness. And so I'm hoping that the coaching will continue to grow. It's sort of just plateaued, I'll say. And I think the drinking is just a really interesting conversation and vital, important conversation during this time as well, because that is something that I think people's non-drinking has something that they've had to prioritize. Like we see everything about alcohol sales and everything skyrocketing, and drinking is through the roof. And so I think what I'm experiencing for myself and for other people that I'm coaching is that just focusing on sobriety and being okay is taking a lot of effort. And now we're starting to add in like the coaching and the yoga classes and the other things where we can feel better about ourselves in all the ways. That's what I'm experiencing personally and with other clients.
I had an article that came across my mobile phone feed. I dropped it into Pocket, so I will read it at some point. I haven't read it yet, but the title was basically it was saying that during COVID and the lockdown, nothing has changed in as much as the women are still bearing most of the responsibility around parenting, cleaning. Why is that, do you think, that men seem to be so stuck in, it's both really, isn't it? We both seem to be stuck in these stereotypes. I mean, you must come across it a lot in your work. What's going on there, do you think?
I do. Gosh, that's such a great question and such a vital point to bring up, that so many women I speak to, clients and close friends, talk constantly during this time about how acute the issue of division of labor is right now. And that while there have always been issues with division of labor in most households, in a traditional household of a mother and a father with children, that the mother feels that she's doing more when it comes to a lot of the housework or just all the things for kids, like booking camps, keeping up with field trips, laundry, like all the things, right? But during this time, it seems that is still the case. And I can absolutely echo that I'm hearing that. So you're asking, why is that the case? I mean, it's such a big question. I think we get so entrenched in our, gender roles, and women traditionally take on so much. I'm also a firm believer that women are capable of so much, that they just do and do and do and take on almost until their backs break or until they have complete meltdowns. and this is not surprising then that there is this mommy wine culture, because women are so overburdened, so overworked. They don't ask for enough help. For whatever reason, the men are not, generally speaking, contributing as much. Even if they're contributing a lot financially, they're not contributing as much in the house with all of the practical, tactical, tangible stuff. And they are not the emotional support to the children in the house. And so women are looking for any way to escape that they can, and by and large, not healthy ways. And that is also highlighted during this time. So it's really, really, really tricky. I think it's a very big issue, but it comes down to women learning how to advocate for themselves and how to focus on self-love and self-care. And that is truly the purpose of my coaching, is to help women get happy with the lives they have, find joy in them, be able to make changes through advocating for themselves, through loving and caring for themselves, through saying, I am important, and I'm just as important as anyone else in this house, if not more, because I keep everything going and everyone needs me, and I need to be okay. I need to be better than okay.
Yeah, I've been doing, 1,000 Days Sober has existed in one form or another for about a decade now. And I'll tell you, I don't ever remember, let me rewind a little bit. One of the impediments I find with women when it comes to being people that don't drink alcohol is they don't plan, schedule, carve out the time that it takes them to work on being sober. There's also a financial aspect of it as well. I'm more likely to get a woman contact me and say that they can't afford it than a man. But in general, it's a time issue. So a lot of women, they just don't do the work. And then when I'm talking to them about why that is, it will come up that they don't have the time because they're always looking after the children. But one thing I never hear, Grace, is a complaint that they've had a conversation with their husband or their partner and that they won't let them have the time. What seems to be happening is they're not even having those conversations. So they're afraid there's something stopping them from saying to their partner, hey, I've got a call with Lee at 1:00 and I want you to look after the kids for an hour, right? Those conversations don't seem to be happening. Why is that? And what could we do to help them break through that barrier?
Oh my gosh, you just laid that out so articulately. And yes to all of that. And what my immediate response is, what just popped right up for me, is that it's not the woman's unwillingness to have the conversation with their partner because they think their partner will say no, because in most cases their partner will say yes, right?
Yeah.
It's the woman's belief that she is not valuable or worthy enough to devote that time for herself. You mentioned something so important and so true about women often saying that they can't afford it. What that's about most of the time, in my experience with coaching, and I think really speaks to what you're describing, and in so many aspects of life with women being unwilling to carve out the time or find a way to do things for themselves, is that it's not about not having the money. It's about being unwilling to make the investment in themselves.
Okay.
It's about a lack of self-worth. It's an inherent belief that women have, for whatever reason, that they are to come last. And we are taught culturally, and I believe those of us who are very maternal, there are women who have children who are not maternal. There are women who have children who are very maternal. Those of us who are naturally inclined towards being very maternal believe that our children come first. They should get more of our money. They should get more of the time. They should get more of the investment in extracurriculars and health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there has been this incredible movement towards women's health and wellness, of course, over the last, I would say, decade in particular. And it's only growing and growing and growing and growing. And that's a beautiful thing. But I think, to answer your question, it really comes down to, I think women just not believing that they're worth the investment of time and money. So how do we help them? I feel like that's my journey in life right now. If I could have a conversation with every woman I know, and I've had a conversation with many, but it'd be hard to do it with everyone I know, which is why these podcasts are an incredible opportunity that we have to share what my experience has been over the last year and a half when I decided at the age of 43 to prioritize myself for the first time, and what has come of that. It would be impossible for any woman to say, I'm not worth that. Because the outcome of prioritizing yourself is enormous, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. All of it. It's sort of like I've heard you say before about getting sober, that it's like putting your foot on the gas pedal, that it's like it accelerates your life, that you're able to do so much so quickly because you've got the time and the clarity. And so that really resonated with me, because when you prioritize yourself, all good things flow from that. And how do we get women to do that? We just keep talking. We just keep talking about the benefits of putting yourself first. And it's not selfish.
No, not at all. Because if you start from the basis that you can't really change anybody else. So in this dynamic that we talked about with the man and the woman in the relationship, I know for people listening there, that they're all different types of gender relationship, but this is like the most stereotypical issue and problem that I see. That's why I'm talking about the male-female nuclear family dynamic, right? It's I think you make a really good point there, and things that I've never thought too deeply about, the not willing to invest in themselves, feeling unworthy to even like ask for the time. It's not that they're afraid that their partner will say no, they don't think they're worthy enough of it. I think for me, like you say, just being in a group of like-minded people, like 1000 Days Sober, like Strive, like any other group out there, particularly one where alcohol is an issue and you're trying to deal with it. And you can talk to women about this who are actually nailed it. So they've actually stopped drinking. They've put the foot on the gas pedal. And part of that, like jet propulsion, is right. I'm going to carve out boundaries for myself. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to demand that I have X, Y, Z in my relationship, and I'm going to retain my power and show my power, right? And to see that is like very inspirational for people. They're kind of like, wow, she can do it. I can do it. So I think being around the right type of people is really important. What do you think about that, Grace?
Oh, gosh, I really agree with you. Finding people who are like-minded or people who inspire you. A really big thing in my life has been identifying people who have something that I want. And it's not material. I think when I was much younger, it was material. But throughout this process, when I knew I was changing and growing and that something was going to give and that I had this inner voice that was telling me to change, I started telling me to change, but also telling me that there was something more for me, right? And that I wanted to change. What I started identifying was something in other people that I wanted. And it was in the form of their joy, their self-worth, their inner peace, their outer peace, how they presented themselves. It was about, I was finding people that I was really being drawn to women in particular who had what I wanted in terms of the way they moved through life. And they were very at ease, very self-confident, very self-assured. And it's interesting because I had been all of those things and portrayed myself as being all of those things for years, but I still had the piece of drinking. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And so I think, yeah. Yeah. So finding people who you identify with and who are like-minded and who are living a life, again, not materially, but are living a life that you want to live, feeling the way that you want to feel, and that is so powerful. And it's just, sometimes really it entails finding new friends or finding a different group or, doing a deep dive into podcasts, or in this case, finding your program where you can get, matched up with people who are like you and go on this journey together. I mean, I think it's extremely powerful to have people on your side, who you're looking up to or who are doing it along with you.
I mean, it goes back to childhood, doesn't it? How many times have we heard our parents say, or we've said as parents, oh, they got in with the wrong crowd, So, if you can get in with the wrong crowd, and it seems to be a modus operandi for most of us when we're younger, then we can get into the right crowd as well. One word that that comes up for me here is envy. So, sometimes, well, quite often actually, as we're talking about stereotypes, envy gets a bad rap. People think, well, if I'm envious, I'm jealous, that means I'm lacking in something and I'm too materialistic, like you said, and all that kind of stuff. I actually think contrary to that. So I think envy is a good thing. So if you actually are not quite sure who your tribe is, then start thinking about who you're envious of and then start making a list, a bit like Grace said. What are the things that I'm envious of in this person? And it could be, while this person has their shit together, while this person has a lot of time on their hands, while they look so beautiful, while they seem so fit and healthy, while they're always talking about eating so well, they're great parents. It doesn't matter what it is, but there'll be something about them that you're envious about. And that envy is not to be seen as a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it allows you to put the mirror up and say to yourself, what is it and what areas do I want to improve upon? Not what areas am I lacking, but what areas do I want to improve upon? So,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly right. So well said. I think that's a great list to make. And it seems counterintuitive. We're taught that it's not a good quality to be certainly jealous or envious of someone, but envy can be a really powerful tool towards getting somewhere you want to be in a really positive way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And for the guys who are listening, I just want to tell you a little story here that I found very interesting. So I'm at home at the moment with my two in-laws. They're both in their late 70s. And I'm here with my wife and my 3-year-old daughter. And my father-in-law, who's a tailor, typically outside of lockdown, he's working 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day. So he's in the house. And if you listen to this podcast regularly, you would have heard me talk to Lisa Dinhofer about how he's always trying to keep himself busy and he's always trying to be creative. And I think that's because he knows that if he stops, his lifespan will just whittle away, right? He's lost his meaning and purpose in his shop. So he needs to find it around the household. And something happened the other day that I thought was really interesting. He ate breakfast and then he went over to the sink, which was full of dishes, and he just washed his own pan and put it on the side. And then he went outside and spent the next 12 hours moving bricks around, cleaning up stuff in the garden, chopping down trees. And then I thought to myself, why do you not wash the dishes when that is something that you can do that's going to take up your time? Why don't you help me clean the bedroom? Why don't you help me clean the kitchen? Why don't you help me hoover up and mop up? Why are you cleaning the garden? And I realized that it really is a stereotypical subconscious behavior, right? I haven't sat down and asked him about this because I don't want to offend him in any way. But I imagine it's because he's categorized in his head through the way that he's been raised as a child that cleaning the kitchen is a woman's job and cleaning the house is a woman's job, but tidying up the garden is a man's job. Mm-hmm. And I just want to raise that for men listening to this, that if you fall into those same patterns, the very least we can do is be curious about why we do that and why we think. Because a lot of times we won't even be thinking about it until someone like me talks about it on a podcast. So if you find yourself wanting to bust a Barbie out and be in charge of the barbecue, but you never cook anybody a meal in the house, if you find yourself like cleaning the garden and chopping down trees, but you never get the Hoover out, ask yourself, why is that? I mean, what do you think about that, Grace?
Yeah, I know. I think that's great. It's a timely, example. And I'll give you sort of an opposite example from my own family, just to show how different families are. And it's a great example going back to what we're talking about women needing to learn to make time for themselves. And I'm a little bit right now of like the cobbler's child who has no shoes, because I coach women how to do this and to do this. And in my own house over the last 3 months, my husband has been advocating for himself in a way that is it's an incredible thing. And first I want to say he's very helpful. The division of labor is no question 50-50. He was raised by a wonderful woman who made sure her son was an equal partner and contributor, and he really is, and it's amazing. But so I don't have complaints about the division of labor. However, my husband over the last 3 months has lost 25 pounds. He runs every day, and he makes time for himself, for his health, and does not compromise on that. I mean, if there's a moment that he can't do it, he'll find a different time if it doesn't work with our schoolwork or whatever. But he advocates for himself every day and his health and wellness and mental health in a way that I have not done for myself over the last 3 months. I have been totally focused on my children and on my career when I can be. I mean, I exercise for mental health and, but it's just to say that it's a reminder that this is available to us as men to help the women in our lives move forward in their lives. It's available to us to support them, to say, what do you need? Like he'll say to me, what do you need? How can I help you? How can I give you time? And that's something that men can do to be really helpful. But it's also available to us as women. We need to find our words, find our voice, find a way to say, you know what? It's just as important for me to get out and go exercise as it is for my husband and for my kids. But no one's going to make sure that I do this if I don't. So I better step up and say what I need. And again, we're just not as good at doing that as women are, as men are traditionally. And I look at my husband and his new fit body, and I'm like, I got to learn how to advocate for myself like that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I've had the similar thing happen in my household actually, and it can lead to a lot of conflict. Because from a man's point of view, you're going out looking after yourself in what you perceive to be your time. And then if you're like, I'm much more likely to, all right, in lockdown, it's different because we can't hire a babysitter, but I'm much more likely to hire a babysitter to look after my daughter during my time so I can look after myself than my wife would, right? My wife would be like, no, this is my time to connect with my daughter. Whereas I'm kind of like, well, I have a choice to connect to my daughter. I'm going to get this thing done, and I really need to get this done. I'm going to have to sacrifice my connection until the weekend or something, right? So I definitely have got myself in a dynamic where I'm kind of taking care of myself, and I'm just thinking that my wife will take care of herself, and she's not. She's looking at me going, well, yeah, he really needs that time, et cetera, et cetera. And I need to look after the kids when I have my time. And then it'll come out in a big bang, right? and I'll be like, well, it's not my problem. It's your time. What are you doing? And there needs to be more of a recognition and an understanding of what's going on underneath the hood, which what you said right at the beginning about the unworthiness, the not willing to invest in themselves, that can't afford it. And we're using this as a metaphor. We can't afford it kind of mentality. Now we're talking about it. It does allow me and other men out there to think a little bit differently about it and to go out for your walk or go out for your run and then come back and say, hey, get your ass outside and go for a walk or a run. I'll look after the kids for 15 minutes.
Exactly. Yes.
Because women are going to find that super sexy as well, right? Like they're gonna be like, oh wow, he really sees me, like, that is the start of connection.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the fact that I have someone who cares that I get time to myself, who cares that I am able to do things on my own for my spiritual health and physical health is everything. It's everything to me. I mean, but it's incumbent upon me to take that time and make the most of it. He can't go exercise for me. So, it's systemic, and a lot of it's systemic, but it's cultural. It's just so ingrained, and it's 2020 now. We're learning a lot of lessons, and if we can move powerfully after this, during it, throughout it, and after it, with new things that we've learned and old things we've recognized and realized, we will be our most powerful and beautiful versions of ourselves. But we've got to take the time to recognize it.
I think the current protests that are going on around the world with the death of George Floyd, I think this is going to spill out into this dynamic that we're talking about as well. I think a lot of women will be watching what's going on the news and look at it. You look at it on the tin, as we say in the UK. You look at the label on the tin, and it's about racism, but it's not about racism. It's about power hierarchies. It's about dominant groups and how they're treated different than non-dominant groups. And I hope that this, what's going on right now outside of the looting and the unnecessary violence, that women will look at it and start standing up, start saying, no, I'm not taking this shit no more, right? Like I don't feel that we should be in a non-dominant group, because I'm telling you, Grace, as a man, I was raised in a household which wasn't overtly patriarchal, but it definitely was systemically patriarchal. Like my dad didn't walk around with a belt in his hand whipping everyone into shape, but he ate first. He took the bath first, and then we all dived in his dirty water after him, wife and kids. He watched what he wanted to watch on telly. He had specific rules about how I should be treated when I first started earning. So when you grow up as a kid and you got that role model, I'm going to be the first one to admit that my motherboard, my foundation as a human being, Grace, is overtly patriarchal. It's I'm the boss, right? And I have to try work really hard. And I'm lucky that I've got a wife that takes no shit. I have to work really hard to go, oh, Lee, you're doing it again. You're going down that road again, because I don't want my daughter to end up in a relationship where she's married to someone who thinks he's the boss. I wanted to marry someone who's got a 50-50 division of labor and meaning and purpose and childcare and everything else. So it's very, very cultural, isn't it? We're dealing with a real culture issue here.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very deep. And, in the same way, I have two sons, and it's so important to me that they see that their mother is hardworking and driven, creative, all of the things, but also too that I prioritize myself and that I take care of myself. There's so many ways in which I want my boys to view the world, or I can't make them view the world in a certain way, but I want them to understand certain things. And I want them to learn about loving and respecting women in all the best ways. And that's what my husband and I show them through our relationship. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to be learned on every level right now. There's no question. And I think the conversation that I keep having with everyone is just, we are going to all be better for this. Well, many of us, if we can take these lessons into the future, because there is no doubt we are experiencing, whether we like it or not, a great universal reset, and it's an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing you the one thing you missed out there about part of you that's a role model to your two boys is you don't drink alcohol. You were 1 year alcohol free in March. Why did you make the decision to stop drinking?
Yeah, so I think it's been about 15 months now, and it's funny. I was thinking before I was going to talk to you about how long it had been, and the truth is that I don't really mark the time very often, because for me, it's just simply something that I don't do anymore.
Yeah.
And I never, ever thought that I would be a person who would say that. And yeah, so why did I do it? I loved drinking. I was a person who loved alcohol. I think many people do who drink. I thought it was fun. I thought it made me more fun. I was really a stereotypical sort of party girl, like fun times, always hosting parties, always going out. But there was this voice that I've mentioned to you before, and I think we all have it. I know we all have it. I call it the inner voice, the pilot light. It's like it's your spirit, it's that voice that's always there when you're quiet. And it was a voice that for about 15 years of my life was like, something's got to change here. Like, this is not doing you any good. I was someone who had a really good career. I had a great relationship. I had children, ultimately, on and on and on. But it was not serving me in any way, the alcohol. It was bringing me down, slowing me down, wreaking havoc on my life, wreaking havoc on my spirit, really, because I wasn't losing jobs or anything. But so the short answer is that I did it for myself. I think it took me a long time to realize that I also did it for my children. I think that was really hard for me to even feel for a long time, that I did it for my children. And I think it's really important that I did it for myself, and that felt like the most important thing. And it kind of remains to feel like the most important thing, because I wanted to be, without sounding too much like a slogan on a t-shirt, I really wanted to be my best self. And I knew that I wasn't. And I knew that I was a successful entrepreneur. I was a successful wife, mother, friend, daughter, sister, but that I could be so much more, and that I could be so much happier without it. And I realized only really recently that beyond that, the biggest thing was that I think I subconsciously or consciously knew that my children needed me to be steady, and they needed to count on me, and they needed to know what they were going to get from me. And I was not as steady as I wanted to be. I just wasn't. I couldn't be with the way I was drinking. So I removed it, and I have found a life that's more joyful than I ever could have imagined was possible without alcohol. And that is a big part of my message and what I want for other women to understand, women who are questioning their relationship with alcohol. I call mine a complex relationship with alcohol. I try not to label it too much, but I describe it as a complex relationship with alcohol with a lot of gray areas. There were a lot of things I did that I am really not proud of, but I never want to label it as being this or that. It was complex. And ultimately, it needed to change. And I want for women like me to understand that it's possible, but not only is it possible, it's that we are taught that there is no life without drinking, that there is no fun, there's no sunshine, there's no party, there's no vacation, there's no friend dinner, there's no anything without alcohol. And I am here to say, not only are there those things without alcohol, but it is so much more colorful and joyful than you could ever imagine.
How did you start? What method did you use to stop, actually?
So this is where I think it gets a little bit tricky, because obviously getting into sobriety and quitting drinking is so nuanced. And for 70 years, there was just AA, and there are so many different programs. And now, and of course, you have a wonderful program. And my story is, I guess I'll just say my story is different. My story is my own. And where it is right now is that I have had no formal program for getting sober. Here's what happened with me, is that I had a voice telling me something, scratching away, scratch, scratch, scratch. And as a person who devours podcasts and did for 2 or 3 years, I came upon this woman, Ruby Warrington, who wrote a book called Sober Curious. And I started reading that. And I was like, God, that really resonates with me. Sober Curious. What is that? What is that? Read the book. It led me down the rabbit hole. Really on Instagram, the huge rabbit hole of women and sobriety on Instagram. It led me to Holly Whitaker, Quit Like a Woman. It led me to Laura McCowan. Her book recently came out called We Are the Luckiest. It led me to a lot of other sober podcasts and women talking about this. And for me, it became almost like, when I say, I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to sound like I'm minimizing the process. And I don't at all want to intimate that this has been easy for me, because it has not. But for me, it started almost as an experiment. Like, what would my life be like without it? Am I brave enough to try? And the voice was so loud that I was like, I can't not try. And my trying, when it started with a really emotional conversation with my husband, who has owned bars and restaurants for 20 years, sells alcohol for a living, and, with whom I've spent decades eating and drinking for pleasure. It started with an emotional conversation of me saying, I don't think I want to drink anymore. Are you okay with that? Like, can you be okay with that? And he said, you're 100% your best when you're sober. And I want you to do whatever is right for you. And I support you. So my experiment started like that, Lee, and it went on for days and weeks and months. And this spiritual journey just, it was like a snowball effect. And it led me to just a lot of personal growth, self-discovery. It led me to training to become an authentic leadership coach, a life coach. So what I'll say now is that while I'm 15 months in, it's a long time and it's a short time. And I remain totally open to different programs. I'm open to trying and doing all different kinds of things. And so that's where I am, Lee. I just remain open. What I can tell you is that I'm happier without it, and that every day I choose not to drink. And there have been some really hard moments, mostly over the last 4 months in quarantine, or 3 months. And I still make that choice not to drink because the price is too high. I know logically that first sip of rosé, that warm feeling, that first glass, like that's what I want. And then I know where it goes from there, and I know how I wake up feeling, and I'm unwilling to live with shame, regret, anxiety, et cetera, ever again. I'm just not, I'm just happier without it. So I remain open, but I don't have a formal program.
It's good. And you've done something really brave and courageous by putting yourself out there and telling your story, isn't it? Because it's so much more difficult to fall back into that trap once you've told people what you're about, because they then get inspired by you. They want to be like you. And then, and then if you turn around and change that, it's a little bit complicated. I remember when I had a drink after 3 years of not drinking, and I just remember the jiggery pokery going on in my head. It was like, oh man, I'm going to have to teach people to moderately drink because I just had a drink. And then luckily it only lasted a couple of weeks and I got back to normal, but it does affect so many things.
Yeah, it does.
I was talking
for sure.
I was talking to, I asked this question the other day to our strivers, about day ones. I was saying, hey, what is the score here? Do we just start or do we have to prepare for it? And Sue said something that I thought was quite interesting. She said, looking back now, she said, she's got like close to 200 days under her belt, right? So she's like, looking back now, you, Lee, kept banging on to me about that I shouldn't be in the pub because it was always dragging me back in and I was always defending my right to be in the pub. She said, now I can look back in hindsight and I can see that I would have made quicker progress had I listened to you and not gone to the pub, knowing that I could go back and revisit it at some point in the future when I'm stronger. So that was a really big light bulb moment for her, like a crystal ball moment. If only I had this crystal ball back then. What is it about being sober that makes you laugh, that you used to be so hooked on this value that you got out of it, that you now look back and think, wow, that just didn't exist, or it certainly wasn't as valuable as I thought it was?
The value of drinking? Oh, gosh. Well, I think it's what so many women, young and old, have with children or not children, and that is the lie that alcohol tells you that it is a stress reliever.
Right.
And I just think that's the biggest one. We drink, and I'm going to say I'm going to speak for myself. I am a 44-year-old white woman who, started drinking heavily in college, and it continued for 25 years. We drink to be social. We drink to fit in. We drink for so many reasons. We drink sometimes because it tastes good. If you don't have a complex relationship with alcohol, you're more likely to drink because it tastes good. But one of the biggest reasons we drink is because we want to check out. We want to relax, right? And as women, there's this whole thing, I mentioned it before, the mommy wine culture of, your life is so hard. You can't get through it without this adorable bottle of pink wine that's going to take away your problems. And it has a beautiful label and it's a pretty color and you deserve it. And I bought into that for years. And the thing is that it's a lie. It's a lie because you end up feeling awful. If you're someone who doesn't just have a glass or two, the lie, then you're feeling like it's going to relieve your stress and take away your problems and make you not hear your kids screaming, or make you less irritated with your kids, or make you less frustrated with your boss, or make you less upset about the breakup you just had, or help you deal with the stress of the argument with your husband, or all the things. Like, I have celebrated and mourned all of the things you can possibly imagine by drinking wine. And the lie is that it does not make it better.
Gets you so angry, doesn't it? I remember when I stopped drinking and then I reflected and I was like, are you serious? I've done this for 3 decades thinking that this provided me this value and this value and this value, and it didn't. It was just a lie, and I was just lying myself just because I was addicted, and it just like it shook me up. That's why I created the podcast, and that's why I created 1000 Days Sober, because I was just so annoyed at seeing my friends and my family around me falling for the same lies, of which 100% of them still are. So I didn't make much of an inroad in being a role model for those folks, but I have managed to turn a few people to the light.
Well, it's really tricky because I want to say that there are so many people who can benefit from being turned to the light. But I do believe there are so many people who are able to have the drink or two or even three, and they're able to feel the joy and feel the calm. They are not drinking to escape. They do enjoy the taste. That's what I mean. It's my strong belief that this is so gray and it's so nuanced. And I think the hardest realization I had to come to, because I too don't use the term alcoholic. I don't identify with that. But I had to come to that realization and get really honest with the fact that my relationship with it did not work. There are people for whom it does work. And for me, it does not work. And it can't be what I wanted it to be, And so for me, that it just feels like an important distinction, that like I am one of the people who just wanted it to be something that it can't be for me. And it's been really enlightening in this sober journey to speak to people, my husband being one of them, about the ways in which I view alcohol and thought about it and used it. And he doesn't relate to or identify with any of them, nor did he know that I felt that way about it, because I would hide it. I never would say how I really felt about it. But so I just think it's really, really interesting. But yes, I don't want to say I don't feel angry. I feel like I'm someone, and maybe this is me being a coach, but I don't spend too much time looking back anymore with regret. I had to work through a lot of that. And I have, and it wasn't easy, but I just move forward, because you know what I think? I think I get to choose to not drink, and I don't ever have to wake up feeling all of those ways again, ever. And I am so thankful for that.
And what a lovely place to leave it, Grace. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your time here. And I love the way that you have stopped drinking, and, really kind of like it seems like it's there's parallels there with your choice to go into life coaching and to help women in particular change their lives. So,
yes.
The women in the world need all the help they can get. And I really applaud you for doing that. So how can people find out more about you, Grace?
Well, Lee, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing, and I just really appreciate this time. And people can find me at my website, which is gracebeasoncoaching.com. It's Beason, or on Instagram at Grace Beason Coaching.
Okay, you take care of yourself, Grace, and I'll catch up with you soon. If you ever need anything, you give me a shout, okay?
I sure will. Thank you, Lee, so much. You take care.
Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Addiction Podcast. Now, before you run away, just a few things, okay? So, the next time we run the 1000 Day Sober Experience, our program that guides you and helps you to become 1000 days sober. So that's 2.7 years, folks, right? It's the only long-term program in the world where we're with you constantly to help and guide you through the 6 stages of the STRIDE model for change. We get you through being stuck. We get you through thinking and the ambivalence around drinking alcohol. We get you through the research phase of making some change. We get you through the change. We manage you through that change. And then after that, with alcohol in the rearview mirror, we help you to evolve, to live a fulfilled life, to do that incredibly important post-recovery work, which so many people, so many organizations out there dismiss or just don't even cover at all, right? So we got you back for 1000 days. The next time we run an experience will be in July. But do not wait until then. The best thing that you can do right now is to get over to www.1000dayssober.com and sign up to be a member of Strive today. Okay, it is £40 a month subscription. That includes the 1000 Days Sober experience. It includes online workshop. It includes online meetings. It includes guidance from our ambassadors. It includes one-on-one meetings with our incredible Strive coaches who are skilled at a vast array of important elements of your life that are going to drive up and increase your physical and mental health. And by joining now, you get used to the environment, you get used to the community, you get used to the people, and by the time July comes along, you'll be firing on all cylinders, kind of roaring to get into the 1000 Days Sober experience. So do that today. Really, really important. If you want to get the show notes for today, the show notes are exceptional, folks. You get the show notes from today's episode. You want to get a full transcription of today's episode, and you want to get a special workbook that will give you some fun and interesting questions based on today's episode that you can help, that will one-up your life, right? Then get over to www.1000dayssober.com. You will find the link there and sign up, give us your email address, and we will give you these things free of charge, okay? And on that £40 a month, if you do not have the money, if you are struggling financially, then email me at thetruthaboutalcohol@gmail.com and we'll figure something out. Do not let money get in your way of becoming 1000 Days Sober. And just because we go 1000 Days Sober, right, don't be worried about that if you're not quite ready to quit yet. The first stage of the Strive Model for Change is called Stuck. The second stage is called Thought. And we do not expect you to stop drinking whilst you're doing that work. And that will take you a good 4 to 5 months. So you get a lot of grace. We will meet you where you're at in your addiction to alcohol. Don't worry about that, okay? We take on everybody. People who are desperately trying to stop drinking and people who are stopped drinking and they just want help putting their life back together, okay? Lastly, if you enjoyed listening to Alcohol Addiction Podcast, then please rate and review it on your local provider, whether that would be Apple or SoundCloud or whatever. Just give us a nice review and some nice stars. You can find us on Instagram at 1000dayssober.com or 1000 Days Sober, and you can find us on YouTube, 1000 Days Sober as well. All right, take care of yourselves, folks. Ciao, ciao.